Welcome to another episode of Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. Of course, I'm your host, JJ Kitchen. Guys, it's the Sunday conversation, and this is going to be a good one because we have another guest on. It was great to bring on Carlo last week, but we've got the original, the OG of Pitt recruiting from a number of different angles that you guys certainly know, and unless you're living under a rock, you'll know exactly who this individual is. But before we get into it, guys, the sponsors, the show is sponsored by Colonial Beer, located at 4986 Library Road in Bethel Park, PA, 15102. Tremendous people, major contributors to the Pitt Athletics Association, the Athletic Directors Fund, but they're incredible people from top to bottom. Anytime you go in there, you have your heavier beers, your lighter lagers, and of course, you've got the great collaboration with the Pitt and Icy Light logo. Always really cool. They've restocked that over there. You guys have been crushing it going into there. And Bill and Alan are two tremendous people. They love to have the conversation with each and every one of you. They're great people. So when you're in there, make sure you go ahead and say hello. Guys, again, go see Colonial Beer located at 4986 Library Road in Bethel Park, PA, 15102. The show is also sponsored by Thompson Law Group with Brian Thompson, an attorney on your side. Call them at 724-799-8404 or visit them at thompsonattorney.com. Again, Brian Thompson, you guys have got to meet him at the spring game, during the games. Obviously, I sit with him during the year. A tremendous individual, has a great family, comes from a great family. But the great thing about Brian is he cares about you, the individual. Unlike larger law firms, Brian takes care of you, the individual, and he doesn't treat you like a number. If you have an issue or you have a question, make sure you give him a call or send him an email, and he'll guide you through the process from beginning to end. He truly is a professional, but more importantly, a great individual. Thompson Law Group with Brian Thompson. Call them at 724-799-8404 or visit them at thompsonattorney.com. And last but not least, the K Collection, the coffee brand by Austin Kitchen, my younger brother, playing for the Seattle Mariners. And I can tell you this, the AK Espresso, like you guys have always known, the AK Espresso has become my favorite go-to coffee. If it can fuel a professional athlete, it can certainly fuel me and you. Again, the K Collection, the coffee brand by Austin Kitchen, a Mount Lebanon alum, Coastal Carolina, Chanticleer, national champion, and now in the Seattle Mariners organization. Go to www.thekingscraft.com today to get your coffee. Well, guys, we got ourselves a hot topics today. The Backyard Brawl in its final year. We've got tremendous topics in terms of this Pitt recruiting class now in the top 23 per 247. But a great person coming on here today, the original OG, the individual who was making phone calls to talk to individual recruits, a legend in terms of the Pitt community, has a tremendous family. He's a great father, great husband, two incredible sons, Max and Gus, two great individuals. And he's also a writer. Just released a new book, and it's taken off the charts from numerous different angles, and he'll be able to talk about that today. And, of course, that's the Pitt Guru, Harry Psaros. Harry, what's going on, brother?
JJ, how are you? Got me really thirsty talking about beer and coffee. I'm ready to drink something, but no, it's an honor to be here. And because of my book, I've been speaking all over the country and if not internationally as well on some Zooms. And it's great to get back and talk about my passion, which is Pitt athletics.
Yeah, you've certainly done a hell of a job, but just overall, I mean, your travels have been crazy. I mean, talk about that just real quick before we go into Pitt and everything related Pitt. Talk about your new book, man. I think you've done an incredible job. You have changed lives in terms of being able to talk about this. Just talk about just your trips recently, just real quick, because I know people have certainly been following it from afar.
Sure. So my book is From Struggle to Strength, The Father's Journey with Autism and the Power of Hope and Positivity. And in the autism space, there are very, very few men or fathers that have written. There are people like Joey Porter, Marla Mew that have started foundations or schools. So when I looked into it, I decided that my goal was to become one of the more, if not the preeminent voice in the country when it came to autism. And right now it's being talked more than ever on a national scale. And the book has gone not just national, but international. I've been on with Africa, New Zealand, Australia, the UK. We're launching in 3 languages within the next 3 weeks, Greek, German, and Spanish. And then the French version will be coming after that. And to say it's a blessing is an understatement. As a first-time author, to have a bestseller, an Amazon bestseller, and it's helping a lot of people. And if you give back, you get it back tenfold. And I hear from people on a regular basis all over the world, and it's just been incredible.
And for the people that don't know, Harry has been working on this for so long, and I can tell you this: if you've never gone through writing a new book, and like myself, I have not. Harry talks about just the process from beginning to end, and I can tell you this: your dedication, but more importantly, leadership. It's not a noun; it's a verb. And to be able to go out like this, Harry, and just to be a leader for multiple people, not just hundreds, not just thousands, but millions of people, to where you set the standard of what you need to do to go through this. And I can just tell you this: I just can't commend you enough. I mean, I'm a huge fan of yours to begin with, just on a personal level. You know, you've been a dear friend, but someone who's a tremendous leader. And I think that was just important to talk about, and you've done a hell of a job. And again, for people that don't know, on the bottom, Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen, but down at the bottom, you'll see Harry and then his handle over on X. If there's anybody, is there anywhere else they can follow you, Harry, on besides X?
Oh, I'm everywhere. You know, I have harrypsaros.com for my book. Harry Psaros, available on Instagram. That's grown like crazy since my book. I'm almost at 40,000 followers.
I saw.
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook, and I'm not shy. So by all means, never be shy. Connect with me, whether you're Pitt, whether you have a child on the spectrum or a relative and need to reach out. I was just on yesterday with the conference out of Canada. I had hundreds on listening to me. And they were shocked. I said, reach out, like DM me, message me, send me a Facebook request. And many did. So I'm not hiding, that's for sure. And to your point, you know, I'm a doer, not a talker. Mm-hmm. And I tell my boys, in the game of life, if you want to make an impact, you play in the game. You don't sit on the bench. And that's what this book is about. It's about making a difference.
And I can tell you this from a personal standpoint. Again, you know, Max and Gus are two tremendous young men. And again, you know, Max is headed off to the Allegheny College Gators. He'll be playing college football there. So I think all Pitt fans will be rooting for Allegheny College as well. So we're extremely happy about that. And of course, as we get going here, guys, remember, down below, make sure you hit the like button. It helps out with the algorithm, gets more people in the comment section. And as you can imagine, we've got plenty of people hopping in here now. Good to hear from Harry. Met him back in 1997 from the old Pitt message board.
Oh,
I
man.
miss giving him info.
That's an OG right there. I love it. I love it.
Go Golden Flashes, Harry. And obviously some good comments in here. I know you talk about
it's a shout out for my son, Gus. I love it. I love it.
Let's go. And I know you talk about Pitt football, but what's your take on Pitt basketball and the Australian target, Roman? I think we'll get to that here, Joey, in probably here pretty quickly. We'll talk about a little bit of Pitt basketball, change it up. But the first topic of this evening, and I think it's a pretty big one because I've gotten a lot of comments in my direct messages from a lot of Pitt fans, and that's the Backyard Brawl. And it's pretty crazy. Pitt leads this current 4-game series 2-1. I think if Pitt would have had average quarterback play the year Phil Dracovic was here in 2023, possibly this is possibly Pitt's like 3-0 versus West Virginia. But this is the last game going into it. A lot of headlines. One, it's on 9-13. Which is a reversal of 13-9, which is a pretty historical game. Pitt holding out West Virginia from a national title. Rich Rodriguez returns back to West Virginia. You know, talk about, Harry, you know, for going into this season, you know, we look at the overall hype. This is going to be a big game. You know, this is, probably the biggest game on West Virginia's schedule, as it's on 9-13, the last game till 2029. Going into this season, would you agree that, one, I think for both of these teams to close out on a high note in the series, this is a must-win game for both schools? And talk about this rivalry. And, you know, as Rich Rodriguez comes into this new center of college football, do you think Pitt has the edge this year with a new regime down in Morgantown?
So, oh boy, there's so many different angles I could take. So obviously, again, people that don't know, I grew up in Weirton, West Virginia, proud steel town. My father, late father, George, and my Uncle Perry, who's listening to us right now in Bethany Beach, Delaware, shout out to him, are rabid, diehard, WVU fans. So I grew up in that environment, and I was the black sheep that went to Pitt. The first thing, let me say that's amazing to me, my father and I would communicate every day. When Rich Rod, it's an incredible story having him back. And people might forget the perspective. He clearly brought them to nearly a national championship if it wasn't for the 13-9 Pitt victory, which is improbable, historic game. What's amazing to me is he was shopping himself around after that. In a weird way, Pitt fans can kind of relate to him to Todd Graham. Yeah. And my father, if you cut him, he was bleeding the WVU blue and gold, really grew tired of that act. And prior to Michigan, he was interviewing someplace else.
Alabama.
So people vehemently hated him when he left. So the fact that he was returning is amazing to me. The other thing I'll tell you, I called my Uncle Perry and I said, listen, Ren Baker's going to hire Andy Kolanecki, the Penn State coordinator. What I would love to know if I was a fly on the wall, my vibe says to me that was his guy. And I could be wrong on this, but Rich Rod, because of the prominence that he brought the program, and a lot of the prominent alumni said, listen, if you want our money, and we're in the age of NIL, you better hire our guy. So, will Rich Rod work out there? It's a total crapshoot. I go back to like someone like Justin Fuente at Virginia Tech. He was like the hottest name in the country and he blew up in 3 years, Yeah. So now to your point, last year when WVU came into, Acrisure, we had a completely new offensive staff, a new system. Hell, I didn't know what we would do, quite frankly. New quarterback, right, with Holstein. So looking at it now, and it was amazing. I was studying their roster. They had tremendous upheaval, and they lost a lot. They have some dogs. Nico Marchiol, their quarterback, I think is great. Jaheim White is a complete stud. I mean, like priority number one for Pat Narduzzi is going to be stopping White at all costs. They have Rodney Gallagher, which everybody locally here is very familiar with. And they did bring in some transfers from like LSU, Arkansas, Texas for the line. But you're looking at a new system. It's never easy to implement. We're only talking, I think, in the season game 4 when they play. So in my opinion, if you look at the two teams on paper, Pitt should win. And I believe they should win by over 10 points. But I want to throw a but into that. They're playing in extraordinarily hostile territory. And this is a series where you never know what you're going to get. And last year, I mean, that game blew my mind. WVU was, when they went up by 10 and CJ Donaldson for the Mountaineers, which is currently, I think he transferred to Ohio State. Yep. He looked like the next coming of Jerome Bettis. Yeah. I thought game over, right? They're up by 10. And Dejon Reynolds, who was never going to be compared to Larry Fitzgerald, in triple coverage, catches that touchdown, changes the face of the game, and Pitt goes and wins last minute. It blew my mind. So the point being, this is a tough one, but my gut still says Pitt wins. And I don't care if it's by a point or 3 points. It'll be close. But I think Pitt pulls this off. And I like I said, and even looking at their defensive roster, we're in the age of the transfer portal. They had to bring in a lot of people. They were semi-successful. I don't want to say they were flawless in doing that. But I think if you compare where Pitt's at, and the other thing I'll factor in too, we're looking at year 2 of a Cade Bell offense. I do think that makes a difference. And boy, did they know how to recruit to it. And I think that if by game 4, I would give you a complete question mark if they were playing in the opener, because you just never know. But I think by game 4, as long as Eli's healthy, Pitt should be humming offensively. And obviously we have All-Americans at linebacker. I can go on, but I think top priority for that game is going to be stopping Jaheim White, who I think is a beast. And if they could do that, I'm fairly confident that they could win. But I do think because of just the extraneous different things, the rivalry and everything, and the environment, that we're looking at a close game. But I'm going to give it a W for Pitt.
And I'm with you here. And it's actually, I pulled up Pitt's schedule here. Pitt faces West Virginia in week 3, which is even more to your point, how early on in the season that is. But also, too, from numerous articles here, it seems as if West Virginia has brought in over 70-plus new players. It reminds me a lot like Colorado when Deion Sanders took over, and they had a 4-8 season to start it off, and I go through plenty of different conversations on X at this point. And, I think it's a lot of, look, West Virginia fans are proud of their program. I think that they're happy. And I think anybody that I talk to, it's almost like a 50-50 split. To your point is, this is Rich Rodriguez, the same guy that sued the university when he was going to Michigan, which was an absolute mistake on his end, which he's talked about numerous ends, had a heckler at his opening press conference. He talked about that. and the 70-plus new players, but bringing in a whole new system. To your point, again, Nico Markiel, I know they're going to have a quarterback competition. They brought in a quarterback from Texas A&M who I think has a potential to play. I still think they'll go with Nico Markiel. Jaheim White, again, former teammates with a guy, Kenny Johnson, obviously wide receiver at Pitt now. And I think when you look at it from different angles, you look at these two teams, I'm with you on numerous aspects of it. I'm going to be very harsh on Pitt if it's not, a 10-plus win. I mean, a 10-plus point win, because this team at West Virginia is, while I understand it's going to be their biggest game of the year. You look at the major disadvantages down in West Virginia, where you have all new players, Zach Alley, who runs a very much enticing, high up-tempo in terms of being able to blitz. He loves the blitz. He's a Brent Venables disciple, and he's talked about that numerous times. And I've talked about, numerous different coaches who have been involved down there, and they've said, look, the defensive side of the football looks to be an issue. They've gone out to the spring transfer portal. They hit that hard. Carlo and I talked about that last week. But obviously their offensive line play has to be improved. They've lost every single starting offensive lineman. I think overall from last year, in his most recent interview, Rich Rodriguez has talked about he only has 2 returning starters from the previous year. I can't imagine how hard that is to coach that, because you're trying to implement your system on both sides of the football. You're trying to figure out which guys match and which guys don't. They brought guys in the wintertime. They figure that they don't fit in the system. They boot them out during the spring portal. And I think that when you look at Pitt, we talked about, to your point, the linebacker room, is, according to PFF, top 5 in the country. It's a top 5 linebacker crew in the country, with Rasheem Biles returning, All-American Kyle Lewis. Then you got Jeremiah Marcelin. You've got Braylon Lovelace. You've got Cam Lindsey. You look at that linebacker crew, it's beyond loaded. And that's a true credit to Ryan Manilak. You look on the back end, and you look at guys like Cruz Brookins, who's going to return this year, a kid that you thought, hey, he was a late ad from Steel Valley. What could he potentially turn out to be? The guy physically has just exploded in terms of what he's truly been able to become. He's become an absolute force on the back end. Javon McIntyre returns. Jesse Anderson's back there. Jaden Bonsu is a guy who's floating between safety and linebacker. I think Pitt looks just a really good on the defensive side of the football. And you see a guy like Jaden Moore, I tweeted out recently, the Oregon transfer who came in from Oregon. He's done a hell of a job really being implemented into this system with Pitt. And I think Tim Dowse has done a good job. But like you said, the main factor, and it's a year or two of Cade Bell's offense. And I think a lot of people are putting to the point where, Eli struggled early on in the spring camp, which, people have to realize he's been out of football for about 4 or 5 months. He rehabbing from an injury, was obviously battered around a good bit towards the end of the year. But now I think he's fully healthy. He's now in the year 2 of this scheme. I think a lot more guys are happy in terms of the actual weapons they have. Kateras Blue Hicks comes in from Louisville. You have multiple different wide receivers. You've got Deuce Spann coming in from Florida State on the outside. Kenny Johnson will be your number 1 wide receiver. Expect him to really be that guy this year. And there's a lot of things that you look at from different onsets. These guys have to prove that they are truly ready to take that next step. And Kenny Johnson, I think, will be one of those guys. But I think I'll be very hard on Pitt. If they don't win, God help Narduzzi and everybody else on that team, I think there'll be a lot of pressure moving forward. They already feel the pressure as it is. But this is a game that I think Pitt should win. The next question is, waiting until 2029. That's the next time this game will be played. Do you think should both schools try to find a way to make this happen? I know Alabama and West Virginia will be playing in 26 and 27. I know the schedules are packed. Pitt will be facing Notre Dame, Wisconsin, UCF. Talk about how it's a crazy thing, even though with conference realignment, we'll talk about that overall later on, but the conference realignment has just ruined regional rivalries. Do you want to see this game played every single year? And if so, why is the game so important for yourself, but all of us as Pitt fans and West Virginia fans?
I think whether it's happening, I don't know, but this is a game absolutely that should be played and I could say the same about Penn State as well. You have that trio of schools. Look, I live here in North Fayette Township. I grew up in Weirton. I was in church. I'm a member of the Greek church in Weirton. I was there this morning. The football conversations occur between Pitt, WVU, Penn State, Ohio State to some extent.
Yeah.
It's so much fun. It really is. And college football is about these special rivalries. And I hate to see it dissipate and go away. So to answer your question again, I think Pitt should be playing Penn State and WVU every single year. It's just a lot of fun. So it's tough. It's tough. You know what I mean? But anyways, shout out to Max. But he had to get that in there. But I do, and I obviously WVU gets a pretty smarmy reputation. They tend to get a little bit crazy, but I do love the rivalry. So I would love to see both implemented. Will it happen? I don't know. And man, WVU, they're going to be stepping up as well. Like you said, I know that the Roll Tide, Alabama's going to be coming into town there to play him among some other schools. So I'm just hoping that we can continue this down the line.
Yeah, me and you both. And to your point too, I think, I did a whole video on the Pitt-Penn State rivalry and just, the conversation from, half the fan base at Penn State where they want to embrace that. They love they love playing Pitt. Pitt loves to face them. But then you have 50% of Pitt fans and 50% of Penn State fans who the hatred is so strong. And you look at both of them and look, there are some very strange individuals and anonymous accounts on both sides, to say the least. I mean, we have seen that to the nth degree. But just the notion of playing Pitt doesn't mean nothing, I think is such a fallacy, especially with Penn State facing Villanova, FIU, Nevada. Right. I mean, those games don't mean anything, and I think that's going to really potentially hurt them down the road in terms of strength of schedule because of they're non-P4 teams. There's no enlightening, enticing games there. I know they struggled with Bowling Green last year, but when you look at those games, they're rivalry games, and people love to play those games. Now, do I think that the Penn State, Pitt rivalry will ever renew? I personally don't think it ever will. I think that Penn State will run to the hills and never look to play that game ever again, especially, and I knew it was going to happen after that 2016 game when Pitt won that game. And I can tell you, but you were there at that game. I was there at that game. I saw grown men crying from Penn State, and I said, there's no way. And I remember my buddy, I was sitting right next to him, and he goes, Jay, embrace it now, because after this 4-game series, they'll never play again. They will never play us ever again. And I think that, it's a shame that that's how it goes. But I think that overall, the West Virginia rivalry, I love how they embrace rivalries. Again, they have another rabid fan base, and that a lot of trolls on that account. But I'll tell you what, I love how they embrace the rivalry. And it's really truly the biggest game on their schedule every year. They embrace it. The attendance stuff gets a little bit over the top for me. They sell out, 1 or 2 games a year with Pitt or Penn State. Pitt plays in a 10,000 seat, capacity larger than what West Virginia currently has. But at the end of the day, I still love the rivalry for what it is and what it can become, because it's so important moving forward.
Right. I agree.
Going into now the Pitt 2026 class, and we've had some tremendous players add into this class, and I think that there's a very good debate on is this Pat Narduzzi's best recruiting class? And I had people ask me that, and I was thinking about it, and I'm looking at it, and it's currently 23 per 247, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, man, per 247 composite wise, they have 4 4-star recruits right now. Potentially, I think they're going to add a couple more who could potentially be even more ranked to a 4-star recruit, potentially 6 4-star recruits. In your opinion, for what's there right now, do you think this is Pitt and Pat Narduzzi's best recruiting class?
Boy, and I really do. I think it is. I've watched a lot of film with this class, and let me give a shout out to all the new additions from last year. The coaches are hustlers. And Carlo mentioned this last week. Shout out to Carlo, good friend. Turbo Tim Salem was an animal when it came to recruiting. I know he was criticized about seeing him leave was tough because he could look at a diamond in the rough, whether it's Servassier or Mac Gonsalves or one of these guys, people would gripe about and they turn into an All-American. So you needed to replace that. And I also think recruiting to some extent is a young man's game. And that influx of young coaches can't be understated because you could see the hustle. You could see him hitting Texas. You could see him hitting Florida. And I could go off on that because I have thoughts on Georgia. And I think we're seeing the fruits of their labor at the moment. I really like a lot of members of this class. I mean, I was just looking at Jaden Dunbar's film yesterday.
Oh my God.
I had so much fun. First of all, if I get isolated just to the wideouts, every player they bring, and you're watching. Brian Hamilton was another one. I'm watching, going, how do you do that? In terms of just vision and elusiveness. And so looking at and obviously the linebacker class that they signed, Simmons, Jennings, Johnson. We're becoming a linebacker factory, which we haven't been in quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many, and I really, really like the locals that we signed. I'm a big fan of Lincoln Hoke, and he has that squat, quick, powerful build that we seem to gravitate towards at Pitt, that is done really, really well. I mean, it seems to do just flourish in our system. And then I will tell you, the one player that put the biggest smile on my face when he committed way back when, I have a source at Pine Richland that said, John Curran is an animal. He's a beast. Watch his film. He loves Pitt. And I got to tell you, I reached out to the staff and I said, you really need to look at this kid. I'm watching the film and he's ragdolling people. And I love when we add people that are also, or players, I should say, that are passionate about wanting to be a Panther. And Duron Barksdale kind of falls into that as well. You're looking at a kid that eats, sleeps football, a kid that just a baller overall. He's an athlete, an impact player in multiple positions. And he's a kid that is just going to be, I think, the next like Cruz Brookins. And I know they went to the same high school. A kid that was under the radar, that's going to explode and just be a great player for Pitt. So I really like our locals. Layman is going to be a beast. Rustin Layman is going to be really, really good. But top to bottom, I mean, I like what they're doing. It's a very complete class. It isn't like they're low in numbers in certain positions. I like that we're yearly now, Pitt's adding a 6'5", 6'6" tight end. So the latest is Wyatt Villarreal, and we added Max. His name's escaping me. Last year we added. It'll come to me here. I apologize, but Max Hunt. But the bottom line, I like that we're finding, because I think tight end to some extent is a crapshoot.
Yeah,
you find these kids that are tall, that can run, and have soft hands, and just hope they work out. So I like that we're no longer potentially having to bring in multiple transfers in tight end. They're starting to kind of bring that in. But this is a really solid class. The quarterbacks are fun. I think Angelo Renda is a perfect fit for what they're doing. He's athletic. I know he's short. I don't care. In this system, you don't need to be a mastodon to go and succeed. So this class has surprised me. Like I said, in top to bottom, it's really solid with the I'd say the linebackers being the standout. But and I'm excited too. I mean, it's been a while since Pitt has added 4 locals, and you never know. By the end of this, with the transfer, anything, it could be more than that. So kudos to the staff. I don't know how much further they have to go in terms of additions. But I think this is a class, given a year in the Ironworks, could be very, very special.
I agree. And to your point about even the WPIAL, and that's a conversation that we've heard numerous times from fans. And I think when you look at the numbers overall, Pitt's done a tremendous job with the WPIAL, regardless. Maybe not getting the top 2 guys every single year, but when you look at every university around us, we are number 1 with WPIAL guys on our roster. To your point, Curran, he's a first-team All-State player. Carlo talked about how a lot of different scouts, which I have heard from numerous colleges, they don't like his length. They don't think, arm length wasn't long enough. I completely disagree with a guy that's playing at the guard position for how he's able to ragdoll people, get up in people's grill. I think he's going to be a tremendous interior offensive lineman, and he truly embraces violence. He's got great footwork, and he's able to move. And Rustin Layman, I've heard from numerous people from the Peters Township area that have told me since he's been a kid, he's been always known as a freakish strength guy. I mean, a guy who's just physically gifted, and now you're to watch him as he gets to Pitt. And again, to your point, the Pitt Ironworks will certainly work him out to where he just blows up, goes into full potential mode whenever he gets into physically where he can be. The tight end position, to your point, Max Hunt, again, I think he'll actually be a really good addition because he's a guy who can run. He's certainly in a position group where Jacob Bronowski has done one hell of a job in terms of being able to develop these guys. Wyatt Villarreal comes in, and it gets to that point too. I heard a lot of other universities, and especially in the SEC, tried to grab Jacob Bronowski, and this guy is working his tail off in the Texas region. I don't remember a time when we had 4, 5 guys from the Texas area, guys like Nicholas Howard, 4-star offensive lineman, had numerous offers everywhere. Wyatt Villarreal, Angelo Renda, quarterback Daly comes out of there. We get 2 quarterbacks, one smaller, one a guy at 6'6". I think you can look at either one. I think Angelo Renda is the guy who's the prize recruit at the quarterback position. Certainly can play in a system that you can just throw the ball around wherever you want to. And, I think to your point, it is a young man's game. When we turned it over and you saw our recruiting classes for the 2 or 3 year stretch, you were kind of wondering, okay, hey, we're kind of getting off the wagon a little bit, and we're starting to fall behind because we're only going after so many certain guys. These guys have just taken off. Cade Bell, J.J. Laster, Jacob Bronowski, Lindsey Lamar. I mean, from numerous levels. But to your point, you look at the class overall from different places, especially you look at a guy like Damon Ferguson, running back 4-star out of the New Jersey area. The kid's an absolute freak. I think he's going to be a tremendous asset in the backfield, especially when Desmond Reed takes off after this year, All-American returning. But talk about how, have you ever seen a time where Pitt went into Texas, of all states? I mean, we're usually known for the PA, Virginia, Maryland, and then down to Florida, especially when Charlie was here. But when's the last time you saw Pitt just absolutely kill it and add tremendous talent from the Texas area?
You know what this reminds me of? So, Pitt fans at times are a little myopic. If you don't have 20 kids from the Whitfield, I think it's great. By the way, we added 4. If we added 5, awesome. But let me add to this. What I'm mostly concerned about is getting great players that are going to help Pitt win on the field. So if you look at where they're tapping into, Florida, Georgia, if you look at the top 5 where there's talent, then there's Texas. So what happened for a while, Pitt tried for a long time in Georgia, and they just kept working it, and all of a sudden the pipeline opened up. It was like the oil gusher in Texas, right?
Yeah.
So then they go to Texas, and Bronowski, I mean, I got to tell you, that's a guy, every recruit tells me, that's my guy. They love him. He seems to know how to build rapport, and he just keeps working it, and here we are with all these Texans coming our way. Yeah. And I don't know how to say this. I would love every talented player from the Whitfield to come to Pitt, or even the surrounding area in Ohio.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I want the best players coming. And if you're not going to strike there, they're going to they are going to Idaho. There's a reason. You know what I mean? They're going Texas, Georgia, Florida. You're not going to go wrong. I'd like to see a little bit more activity in New Jersey, which has always been a bit of a hub. But I'm okay if you're bringing in 5 talented players from Texas. And let's be realistic. We're in the age of NIL. If 1 or 2 of those guys in the future does really, really well, you know that the robber barons are going to try to come in and offer NIL money to pull them away and go, why the hell are you staying in Pittsburgh? It's going to happen. So the one thing I hope the staff can do with who we have in place at the moment, they're going to have to babysit. Now they're in babysitting mode up until the first signing day, because when you add better players, which we have, you're going to have the Sharks coming after them at some point. And that's where rapport and relationships matter. And from what I could tell, the feedback the recruits are giving me going back and forth when we message each other, there's some really close bonds. So this staff, I've done it. Sales is rapport. And they've done a really good job. So I am really pleased that we're starting at home. But if you're going to plume out, you're going to where the talent truly is at. And what's the other myopic thinking, and it's tough to get past this with some of the fans, a 3-star in Texas or Florida could be a 4-star at the Whitfield or in Pennsylvania in general. And they can't. So I would encourage, look at offers, because it's funny. A lot of these Texas, Georgia guys are 3-stars, but they have 20 P5 offers. That says something, and it takes development. And the one thing Pitt is great at And Carlo, God bless him, last week touched on it. Pitt is great when it comes to development. That's the one thing they can hang their hat on. You want to ball out, and we get a lot of players to ball out in the NFL, come to Pitt and get developed because you're going to do it.
Yeah. And we, again, to your point, yeah, we talked about that. I mean, but now it's on a national level to where Pitt is finally getting respect because of the guys going off to the National Football League. Now, that's great. You know, we need more wins. Now, obviously, Pat Narduzzi and company, I think it'll start to build on that to where we need more consistent seasons now with NIL, now it's with Joan Gable, Alan Green, everybody into an aspect, finally in alignment to where things are moving in the right direction. But to your point, I mean, if they can go into Florida, I mean, they have a guy that's right there and has an offer of 20 plus P4 guys, take the kid. I mean, if you can look at a kid's offer sheet and he has, 10, 15, 20 P4 offers, he can play at this level. And then it comes into coaching to where you figure out, okay, can this guy be developed into our system? I was watching a couple other guys nationally. They talked about how a lot of these bigger teams, especially organization-wise, try to star chase. If they got a 4-star or 5-star next to them, they're going to take them. But the reason why they're not winning national titles and they're not winning their conferences, they're 5th or 6th in their conference, is because that player maybe does not fit their scheme. I think Pitt has done a tremendous job, especially on the defensive side of the football, saying, okay, here are the guys that truly fit our team, fit our scheme. Lincoln Hoke is one of those guys. Go look back, and dating back to guys like Jalen Twyman when he came in here. Kalijah Canty was a low-star, 3-star player in the Florida area out of Miami Northwestern. The kid comes to Pitt, developed under Charlie Partridge. He's an All-American first-round draft pick. You see a guy like Kenny Pickett who comes in from the Ocean Township area out of New Jersey, comes in, trained, developed under Mark Whipple, first-round talent, goes off to the NFL. You see Jordan Addison. He comes in. Every other school wanted him as a cornerback. He comes to Pitt. Pitt gives him an opportunity to play wide receiver. Comes in here, obviously leaves to go elsewhere, but he gets drafted based on his film from Pitt, wins another Blentnikoff Award. Pitt has done a tremendous job of developing talent, and it's been well known across different angles, but not from certain different states. I asked multiple different parents from the Texas area, hey, out of curiosity, we hear it from coaches, we hear it from other players, but from your perspective, from a parent's perspective, why did you trust Bronowski, trust Pitt? What was your overall thinking when you committed to Pitt? And I had the quote here. A father reached out to me and said, JJ, we trusted Jacob because he's from the College Station area. We trusted his vision and what Pitt could become, but also what he talked about. We came up to the University of Pittsburgh, and let me tell you, the secret is out. He said this in capital letters. The secret is out. Pitt has tremendous top-of-the-line facilities, and their academic support is second to none. I know I can send my son here and know he's going to be developed on and off the field, but also he can be trained at the highest level when it comes to football. If that doesn't scream a ringing endorsement from a Texas kid who says
that says it all.
What more could you possibly want?
The other factor, when you talk about sales, sometimes you need the elevator pitch or the theme. And what I love about both sides now, we didn't always have it on offense. On defense, it's attack. See ball, get ball. We have a very aggressive attacking defense. There's your 30 seconds if you're selling a recruit. Now on offense, I really do love that it's score fast, move fast. You know what I mean? It's that whole, we're going to be snapping the ball, we're going to move, and we're going to air it out. And I think they have a very tangible sales pitch on both sides of the ball with some younger, really passionate coaches. So you hated to see some of the coaches leave about a year or so ago, but I love the influx of energy that they brought, and you could see that they're making their mark. And I can't wait to see this class in particular develop. I think they're going to be very special.
Yeah, and I think that when you see this team finally push into a year or two from here, I think this class can certainly be something. But to your point again, I just love how the staff is younger. And again, another parent reached out to me and said, JJ, it's almost like the perfect balance where Pat Narduzzi is an old school guy. He's an old school head football coach, but he has the younger staff to where everything evens out. So he may have something that he's been doing for over 15, 20 years. But when you have a guy like maybe like a Ryan Menelak or Corey Sanders, or Archie Collins, or Lindsey Lamar that says, hey, maybe you ought to do something like this that we've seen around the country that makes more sense and can fit into our culture. it makes the most sense. I do give credit to Pat Narduzzi, because you look at some of the decision making after the Mark Whipple, and you and I have certainly, and Carlo have talked about the Mark Whipple debacle. And I thought Carlo had a great point where Pat Narduzzi is the head football coach at the University of Pittsburgh. There are some offensive coordinators, and I know people like to blame Pat, but the fact is Pat is the boss. And some of these offensive coordinators just don't like to be told, hey, here's how we're going to do things. And I think that, Whipple had a little bit of an issue with that. Cignetti, who's a diehard great guy, and to his point, he would hop on a podcast in a minute, and he's a huge diehard football guy. He sometimes had that issue of being told what to do. And, it started with a guy, Brandon Keaton Slovis, who I think was actually a really good quarterback. If he doesn't get hurt, I think it's a whole different ball game. That 2022 team, I think, potentially goes to the ACC title game. Right. But when you watch that team, and you watch the offense that Frank Cignetti had, a guy that's under center, turns his back from the football field, play action pass. That just wasn't Keaton Slovis's makeup. If he's in the shotgun, he's able to see the field, and it's right there in 2-minute time, he's going to carve your ass up. But when you're looking at the offense that Frank was running, it just didn't make any sense. And then you saw Phil Jurkovec come in, which I understand people were very upset about, because Phil talked very badly about Pitt whenever he was on his way out to Notre Dame, to Boston College. But Cignetti was much more of a relationship guy. They bring him in, and it was absolutely just, obviously a horrible experience. Heck, even had me wrong in the beginning. I was a Jurkovec fan, and it just watching it go on through the season, I couldn't believe we didn't pull Jurkovec, halfway through the West Virginia game. That was hard to watch, but
it was brutal beyond belief. There was one of the, God bless him, and I know he was injured, but one of the worst quarterback performances I've ever seen. And I will tell you, him amongst others were really talking up Jurkovec prior to the season. And I had just finished up a conversation with two members of the staff. And I did the Bird Cave podcast, which is fantastic here in Pittsburgh as well. And I'm lauding Jurkovec. In fact, I was talking about a 10-win season. I'm going on and on. And I was I full-fledged. It kind of taught me a lesson, because I was drinking the Kool-Aid. And then I found out that he was essentially a tight end with a bum arm.
Yeah.
And that was during the WVU debacle. And that was some tough medicine to take. You know what I mean? So like I said, I commend Narduzzi with the hire of Bell a year ago, because it was such a paradigm shift in thinking. And honestly, look, all head coaches have egos. And I think what we saw was a lowering of the ego and a logical look to go, you know what I've done hasn't worked, and I need to do something a little bit different. And bringing in someone young, dynamic, with a fast-paced system was what the Panther program needed, for sure.
I agree. And again, that West Virginia game, I'm watching the game live, and I see the first drive, and I know we're just running the ball down their throat. But then when you start getting down close to the end zone, okay, it's like, hey, here can be a really good opportunity for play action. When we didn't throw the ball once and we kicked the field goal, I said, oh my God, I think that they're scared to throw. I'm like, and to your point, it wasn't just you, it was me. I drank the Kool-Aid as well. When you talk to some of these guys and then they're just hyping him up, and then you finally talk to players and they're like, yeah, Jay, they were feeding you, a lot of BS, a lot of fluff behind there, what was going on. But it really taught me, heck, it taught me a lot of lessons in terms of what it looks like. But this team moving forward, again, ego. He hired, I think, the right guy, a younger guy who's very energetic, believes in his system. We've seen it work. Heck, even with a guy like Nate Yarnell last year when Eli Holstein was out, Nate Yarnell threw for 350 yards against Clemson at home. That game was tough to swallow in terms of losing that football game.
That was brutal. Yeah.
The defense was good besides the first drive of the game and the last drive of the game when they scored touchdowns. It was just, it was so hard to watch, because just the two drives defined that game, and it ruined that game. They should have never lost to Virginia. That was an inexcusable loss. And while I blame the staff for a number of different things, and especially too when it came to the bowl game, anything like that, there's a lot of mistakes that Narduzzi makes as a head football coach. But the one thing that I was very disappointed about, I'm not going to mention names, but any fan can turn on the tape. After the SMU game, there were a number of the starters that quit. And I had a lot of players reach out to me, and they said, Jay, there's a paradigm shift here from guys that just aren't trying hard. And, the guys that came to me here, after that season, they're already past spring ball, and they said, Jay, we have a team that's fully dove in. These guys, everyone from top to bottom, is bought into what we're doing, and it's an ACC title, and it's making it to the college football playoff. And that gets into the point of this football team going forward this year. On the offensive side of the football, I think you got a number of guys returning. Eli Holstein back as a starter, Desmond Reed, Joel Goff, Kenny Johnson, Ryan Baer, Jackson Brown. I mean, we got a number of guys coming back from many different angles. On the offensive side of the football, who do you think that Pitt fans should watch? Who's a guy, even two guys on the offensive side of the football that you say, hey, I think he's going to break out this year and he's going to surprise some people?
So let me say this. We know that Des Reed is a dog. Like, yeah, he's a dude, right? It might sound like a dull response, but let me start with Kenny Johnson. Kenny Johnson has a chance for a bag season. And for those who don't understand what that means, I'm talking dominance to the point where the NFL scouts are like, bring him on. I want it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He has the physical frame. He has the ability. He's been good, but not great, in my opinion.
I agree.
I'd love to see Kenny have a breakout bag season. Now, in that, I will tell you, the wideouts are interesting, to say the least. Blue Hicks, and you have Deuce Spann fascinate me, that were brought in. I have had so much fun. I don't know what to say it. As a guy that has covered recruiting 30 plus years, watching the film on all of these wideouts that they're bringing in, all of them are lightning quick, athletic, elusive, and because of this system, they could cheat a little and bring in someone smaller that some of the bigger schools aren't going after. So Johnson has to be the dude this year. He has to and step up. Hicks fascinates me watching the film. I watch him the blue goal game. I think he's in, and the fact that we have some size now with Spann, and I think a kid that it has a chip on his shoulder that feels like he could have done more down at Florida State. So those guys fascinate me. And I think have a chance. Johnson in particular, like I said. The other thing I'm interested to see, the season fell apart when we lost Branson Taylor. And I know. I'm hearing from all
2 years in a row. 2 years in a row at left tackle.
These fans that scream at me and go, Harry, everybody has. Yes, I know, dumbasses. Everybody has an injury. I get that. I'm not stupid. I have an engineering degree. The point being, if you really know the team, they were hitting their cadence on offense, and we were undefeated when we had the lineup in place. We lose Taylor, and then everything to me at that point spun out of control, and you end up with Eli getting hurt. So guys like Bear, I'm expecting a big season, no doubt. Percy, at left tackle, we have 2 transfers in. I love that there's some depth there with Stanley as well. Now, who's going to win that battle? I'm assuming it's going to be Percy. And
I agree.
A quick little note, which is interesting. I love Phil Steele's publication, the Football Bible. Bear was ranked 48th overall in the nation when he committed to Pitt in his aspect. Percy was 49th. So it's kind of funny that we have a 6'8" and a 6'9" guy ranked almost the same. So if I want to see another dude, I'm expecting your Lyndon Cooper, your BJ Williams, who I really like. They're both physical badasses. But I want to see Percy step up. If we could have that left tackle spot solidified, I think this offense can roll. I let me say this, though. We didn't have this a year ago. I do like that if something happens, there's competition and talent at that spot because it's so critical. Because I'll say it again. We lost Branson, and we lost all that continuity on offense. It was a big loss, in my opinion. And now Branson, God bless him, is over with the San Diego organization. And the Spanos family are close families with our family as well. So he's in good hands. But those guys, I want to see Percy really. I'm hoping he could step up to be special. Kenny Johnson, it's time to be a dude. You got to be a dude. Dez is there. God willing, he's not injured. And I know my son Max and I were talking about him. He was right. He's going to be downgraded a little in the NFL because of his size. Yeah. But you give him open space. I think in the right system, he's going to be incredible down the line. So that's just that's my opinion on offense. I mean, those are some of the guys I'm really hoping step up.
And I think to your point, too, especially with Des Reed, I think he's a Darren Sproles 2.0. I think you can utilize him in numerous different ways. He's a great back that can catch the ball out of the backfield. But to your extent, I mean, we talked about from numerous people because they've asked me, Kenny Johnson only had 3 touchdowns last year. 2 of them, one of them was only against the P4 team. And I told them the same exact thing. Your wide receivers can do what they want on the outside, but when you look up front, I mean, we lost, Branson Taylor. We lost Ryan Jacoby at times. We lost Cooper at times. I mean, and you saw the influx. We had to move from Ryan Bayer from right tackle to left tackle. Isaiah Montgomery was making first ever starts. That was different. We didn't have any depth. Jackson Brown finally gets a position where I think he could be a great offensive lineman at Pitt. He finally gets a chance. He's facing a guy that's a first-round draft pick from Clemson, a defensive end, his first start. I think, again, you look overall to the actual potential, but the depth they have this year. Left tackle Percy. I think Jackson Brown will start at left guard. I think at the center position, Lyndon Cooper returns. They've talked about how much better and how much more fluent he is with this offense. Then at right guard, you've got returning B.J. Williams. At right tackle, you have Ryan Bayer, who's back to his side, which I think he's much better at right tackle. He feels more comfortable. And everybody that I've talked to says he is just established himself at that right tackle position. And then behind them, you've got Kendall Stanley, Keith Gouveia, Ty Ray, Isaiah Montgomery. You've got guys back there. Caleb Holmes, the former 4-star offensive lineman and teammate with B.J. Williams. You're looking at 4 or 5 guys that actually have real time. So now you have 9 offensive linemen that you say, okay, hey, if something happens here, I can influx people. I can move people around. I can actually have a lot of good continuity here. And when I had an offensive line coach who works with a lot of great offensive linemen tell me through direct message, hey, I'm going up to Pittsburgh this weekend. Everyone else is home. The only guy's not home. The whole offensive line room stayed on the campus, and they want to work and get extra work in. That's the kind of stuff that where it's the preseason stuff. It's the off-season work. That's where championships are built. And I think that Pitt, whenever they had those seasons where things fell apart, you didn't have players who were completely dove into the process. And things don't go your way sometimes. The prime example is 2021. Pitt loses to Western Michigan. We're all in the same boat. We're saying, this is Narduzzi's last year. He's done. He's gone. All of a sudden, you have leadership, continuity, and maturity. That really does matter in the culture. When guys like Kenny Pickett step up and say, look, we're not having this. This isn't going to be the same old Pitt anymore. We're not winning we're not just going to go win 10 games. We're going to win a championship. We're going to do things the right way. And when you have that true leadership, which I think Pitt does have, Ryan Bayer is going to be a leader this year. I think they love Ryan Bayer. He loves that offensive line group, and people certainly look up to him. Lyndon Cooper's that guy. Jake Overman has certainly stepped up at the tight end position with Gavin Bartholomew no longer there. I think Eli Holstein will step up this year when it comes to that leadership position because now he's a redshirt sophomore, not just a redshirt freshman, and people forget about that too. When you're a redshirt freshman starting in college football, you're going to make mistakes. And I think we've talked about that from till we're blue in the face. People were like, oh, we got to bench Eli Holstein. He's not doing this. He's not doing that. He's a redshirt freshman. And when he started last year, he was 7-1. 7-1 as a starter, and especially when we had guys that were healthy up front. When immediately when we lost people up front, you watch the offense. It was no longer up tempo. We were going slower. It wasn't the Cade Bell offense. Everything was out of flux. Okay. Does that excuse the fact they lost 6 in a row and they lost the bowl game the way they did? Not at all. And I'm not excusing that. It should have never happened. There should have been 2 games in there. They should have won there and should have had at least a 9-win season. But to the multitude of issues, you have to look at it from both sides, like you talked about. There were injuries up front on both sides of the football that were just devastating to the football team. And when you lose those guys and you have guys that don't have a lot of experience, it can hurt the football team. It can hurt the continuity. And I think that's why this offensive side of the football this year, anybody that I talk to, the wide receivers, and I think there's a lot of young guys that are going to be coming up through, Jakirian Boozy Turner at the running back position. We've heard a lot about him. We've heard a lot about Bryce Yates on the outside at wide receiver. You've got C.J. Lee returning again. You've got Raphael Poppy Williams, Deuce Spann, who was a day one starter there last year until he got hurt. Kateris Blue Hicks. We saw the speed of the spring game. All I hear about the guys in the slot, the guy's an absolute freak when it comes to speed. I think, Cade Bell has certainly got his group where he can really run out his offense with numerous speed with C.J. Lee, Raphael Poppy Williams, Kateris Hicks. Deuce Spann, again, a guy at 6'5". Kenny Johnson at 6'1". I think it's truly there, and they finally have the pieces. Do I hope that Derek Davis Jr. gets back this year to where he gets back 100% healthy so we have a larger back there? I think so. You saw Daniel Carter, who the ultimate team player, never complained, never went outside of his way, went to the media and said, well, I should deserve more touches. I'm a bigger back. I've done my job. He just put his head down and worked. And I think that's why players certainly just respected the hell out of him, because it's all he ever did was work. And when he got hurt last year, it was just devastating to watch. I think that this team on offense truly has the pieces that it needs. Now, when it comes to the defensive side of the football, I'm even more to the point where there's a lot of dogs on this defensive side of the football. The question marks, I think, are up front again. We got some possible issues on the defensive end group in terms of we don't know what they look like. But in your opinion, when it comes to that defensive side of the football, who do you think really stands out and makes that jump on the defensive side of the football?
All right, so Cruz Brookins, if you're listening, which I'm assuming you might be, Cruz, what I said about Johnson, I'm going to say Cruz is a dog, but this could be, when I say a bag season, he could open. He's a playmaker. He's a natural playmaker that I think has a chance to have a real bag season and making a major impact. He's another one I'm really excited to see. There's some, in terms of D tackle, Pitt is quite loaded.
Yeah.
I don't know who's going to emerge there, but I'm really excited. I think Ghost Neal who might be the smallest D tackle, but he's the fastest. I think he's in for a big year. Francis Brew is going to be, he was a freshman All-American. I was the bread man, Jashir Whittington, put out a Instagram not that long ago. He has morphed his body into an athlete. I don't know how to say it. So there's so much potential there. To your point, though, in terms of standouts, the other one who won the Ed Conway Award, Shadarian Harrison.
Yeah,
he is a dog, and he's going to be pushing battle, possibly lineman. I don't know who's going to win that battle, but he's a blue chip player that's going to factor in heavily in the future. And I can't wait to see what he does. He reminds me, the linebacker version of him would be Marcelin. And I love what we have at middle linebacker. Braylon Lovelace, I still remember Braylon meeting him and talking with him at 210. So my son Max went. He might have been 200 pounds. Yeah. And a year later in the Ironworks, they're telling me, oh, by the way, he's 230. Now, keep in mind, he has the lineage and the DNA because of his father.
Yeah.
But Lovelace and Marcelin are going to be a nemesis in the ACC, middle linebacker. And so I think there's so much to look forward to in the future, too, with guys like Harrison, Marcelin. What we need to see is who emerges at defensive end. Jimmy Scott, to me, is a given.
Yeah.
Scott is a commodity. And I'll be honest with you, too. If there's a guy I would like to see step up one more level, I am big on him. Last year, I said he would be an impact player, and he was to an extent. I'd love to see him step up. And I know he has guys behind him that are experienced, like Temple and Blaine Spires, who they brought in. Then on the flip side, you and I talked about it, the defensive end, I'm losing his name out of order. Jade Moore, if you look at his statistics, in terms of quarterback pressures, unreal. For the limited amount of time, I think he had like 70 total. According to Pro Football Focus, it was like somewhere between 70 to 80 attempts, and he had almost 20 quarterback pressures. It was amazing, the production. And he's a physical freak. So I'm really hoping, ideally for Pitt, that you have a scary 1-2 punch with Scott and him on the other side. There's some potential there. And behind that is a lot of question marks, and only because it's a lot of players from the transfer portal. I'm hoping they have better results than they did a year ago, because there was some substandard play a year ago, being very honest. Again, so both defensive tackle, I'm not worried about. It's an obscenely talented rotation. And again, a player I think is a commodity is Sean Fitzsimmons. I'm going to put him in the same category as Jimmy Scott. Mm-hmm. They are good. What I would love to see from both is taking that to great. Let's go into a Kyle Lewis. Well, Kyle Lewis is special, but try to get to a loftier status. So, this is a defense that's quite loaded. It's hard to point and find a distinct weak spot. So if you're doing it, looking at the roster, I would say maybe depth at defensive end. And I could be wrong on this. Again, that's going to be a rotation. There might be some other players who are really stepping up. But like I said, I'm really excited about the potential. I love the middle linebackers. I love our defensive tackles. I like the competition at corner because that's going to be critical. And again, Rashad Battle, it's an asset to have a 6'4" corner, with his experience. So as much as we touted the offense, I think Pitt really has a loaded defense. It's hard to argue with that.
Yeah. And again, to your point, the defensive tackle room, I think your day one starters are, Sean Fitzsimmons and Nick James. I mean, those two up front really should be able to front line that defensive tackle room. Then Jasir Whittington, Francis Breu. I think Francis Breu's got the opportunity to go to that next level because of the way our defense is run, how we develop. I think he's ready to rock it off. I mean, I think he's a potential down the road. He's a potential NFL player. That's how good he is. Jasir Whittington, and then as Isaiah Neal, we talked about, he might be the smallest guy, but he's added a little bit more weight, and he's still the fastest guy in that room. So you really got 5 or 6 guys at the defensive tackle position. I'm with you with the defensive end room. I think it's a wait-and-see approach because Jaden Moore, I've heard a lot of good stuff about him, and I think he's going to be a potential breakout player this year for Pitt. Your point to the numbers are second to none. I mean, he was a pass rush specialist, played as a true freshman on the Oregon Ducks that went to the college football playoff. That is no way easy. I mean, you got to be a special football player to play as a freshman with the Oregon Ducks. And I think Jimmy Scott will be a day one starter at the defensive end position, him and Jaden Moore. You got Joey Zielinski, who has done a good job coming in from Eastern Michigan. They almost framed him as the Max Crosby because Max Crosby, with the Las Vegas Raiders, came out of the same university. A guy who's very talented in that area. I think you've got those three, and then Blaine Spires. He had some injuries on and off during the spring. He came in a little banged up, but I think he's going to be 100% healthy. You watch him at that level, and then Nate Temple, and then you still have Maverick Gracio behind that group. Certain guys who have the potential to move up, but I think that is a wait-and-see position. Who really steps up and who wants it the most? That's kind of how I look at it for the DN room. And then you look at the linebacker room. It's still amazing to me in the recruiting aspect that, Kyle Lewis, a unanimous All-American, was committed to Temple before he committed to Pitt.
Like Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett is what's crazy.
It's unreal. And I think that when you look at a lot of these players and how Pitt's developed, Rasheem Biles, Carlo talked about how every university looked at that guy and said he's too small to play. He's too small to play linebacker, but then he's tall enough to play safety, but he's too slow to play safety. All of a sudden, Pitt comes in and says, you're exactly what we want at linebacker. And you see this kid, he's a potential All-American candidate this year. Kyle Lewis to finish out as an All-American. You're watching a guy like Braden Lovelace, Jeremiah Marcelin, Cameron Lindsay steps up. I think he gets a lot of playing time this year, a 4-star player out of Aliquippa. That whole room again, and that's a Ryan Manilak staple. And to this day, I never understood the comments and the debacle around Ryan Manilak. A lot of fans just didn't like the way Manilak was recruiting. Well, here we are 3 years later. He's got the best linebacker room. This was never like this under Rob Harley. It's a completely just 180, that linebacker room. He's done a hell of a job. And then that defensive back room, Rashawn Murray. He might have been a D2 All-American, but
Murray's
the way his size is, he's got a lot of life.
I love his film. He's great. He was great out of high school, too.
Yeah, that's what I heard. And it's crazy. A lot of these kids, all it takes is, hey, during this time period, they find their way, that they mature, but more importantly, just their bodies, how they're able to just figure out, okay, athletically, here's how I fit into the college system at this position, especially corner. A guy that's 6'2", very physical, had himself a really damn good spring. Shadarian Harrison has stepped up. Taman Lynham is back again. You're watching it, and it's just, man, like this kid, you're expecting him to take off. Lastly, guys, if you're in the comment section, we'll get to some of these comments, obviously. If you are there, the super chat button's down below. Make sure you hit like, follow, and subscribe. Again, we've got over 300 people in the chat right now. Make sure you follow, hit like, and subscribe. But lastly here, we've seen the ACC. And in the last topic for tonight, that the ACC, FSU and Clemson finally, end the debacle, the suing, everything, the lawsuit's over. When it comes to the ACC, the way I look at it is I think everybody's safe till 2030. 2030 is everybody else is safe. Mm-hmm. But then I think when 2030 comes, there could be the college football breaks off. But when it comes to just a quick follow the conference realignment work, I think that the ACC really shut down the Big 12 commentators, the YouTubers, the Xers, where the ACC was going to fall apart at the end of 2025, which is clearly not going to be the case. To your point, and to your thoughts, do you think that the ACC stays together to the 2030 era, and then do you think something happens there, or just in your thoughts, in your mind, do you think this Power Four breaks off from the NCAA?
So I think that the ACC will stay together, but when we get to that threshold, ESPN did a survey. I think it was administrators, coaches, players, and 60%, roughly 60%, agreed that college football should break away from the NCAA. What I think will happen is a kind of hybridized system where football separates into its own governed entity, if you follow me. And I think the remainder of the sports will stay in place with the NCAA. I think what you're really looking at is like you're going to look at the Power Five conferences build up. They're going to have everything set up in terms of the playoffs. But I do think you're looking at a hybridized system. Football will break away. There's just too much money there. And but to your point, I do think the ACC stays together up until that point. Now, what it looks like when they break away, I don't know. We'll have to see.
Anybody's game,
anybody's game, and this is where you pray someone like an Alan Green puts Pitt in the position to be successful. I mean, he's in some choppy waters, as not just him, but many athletic directors at the moment. But from what everyone tells me is I've never had a chance to have a in-depth conversation with Alan Green, but they seem to think that we really do have the right man in place when it comes to the job at the moment. But I think that's what we're looking at. It's going to be some sort of odd, bizarre break-off, hybridized. I wouldn't touch the other sports. I would keep them in place. But I think football is going to have to be its own separate governed entity. And what that looks like, I really don't know.
Yeah, and again, guys, we'll get to your comments here. I know a really good friend of ours, Matt Speck, has a couple questions in here, as always.
The shoe god. Yeah.
The shoe god himself.
Yeah, that's right.
But the one comment you did bring up there and just touch on really quickly, because personally, from anybody that I've talked to, I'm a fan because of the hires he's made in the athletic department. What are your thoughts on Alan Green? I personally think he's done a good job of positioning Pitt to where we are now. There'll be a lot more conversations, a lot more decision-making down the road. But I have been a fan because, I know what's going on behind the scenes. He's hired Kyle Bruce from Ole Miss. He's brought in Matt Smith from Tennessee. He's bringing in a lot of SEC people for chief operating officers, chief revenue officers, marketing specialists. He has done a hell of a job from behind the scenes from people who are in the athletic department who have talked to me and told me, they're like, hey, this is a complete 180. We are embracing revenue, NIL. He has brought the rejuvenation of our athletic department and business development. In your opinion, is he the right guy for the job? And what do you think of his job so far?
The chief complaint, and I don't quite grasp this from the fans. A lot of people go, well, he's not out in the open. He doesn't do a lot of talks. He does not as open. I'll be honest with you. I didn't care less. What's that saying? Don't talk about the delivery. Just show me the baby. You know what I mean? And what I like what he's been doing behind the scenes. I've heard the same thing. What I keep hearing is it's a 180-degree change. There's a focus on the revenue generating sports. Ultimately, I think everyone knows this. The success of a university kind of goes hand in hand with the success of their sports teams. And ultimately, you have to focus on your football, your basketball. And in Pitt's case, we're kind of lucky. Obviously, we have a great volleyball program, women's volleyball, but knowing where to prioritize the money, but bringing in people, because especially we're talking about revenue sharing, which has been a prominent topic too. You need to find unique ways to bring in money. And in particular, if you're looking, upwards of 20 million, 25 million a year, and that's what it's kind of looking like, they're going to have to get creative, and he's bringing in those people. They're going to help generate that income. And I don't know how, honestly, every university is going to do it in perpetuity. It's going to be interesting. I believe you should tack on a fee to all of the students, make it an athletic fee, whatever that amount might be. I think you're going to have to tack something on to your season ticket holders. And they're just going to have to understand that this is a small price to pay for better athletic program, and that better athletic program ultimately is going to help the school as a whole. So, but I really like everything he has done to date. Obviously, he's only been in, this is what, year 2? I think it's slightly been over a year, but I have no problems with him working quietly behind the scenes. I don't need him in front of a microphone every 10 minutes. So I'm very pleased, and everyone I talk to tells me we have the right man in place for what we needed.
I agree, and I think that, again, we talked about numerous different streams. They've talked about different ways they're going to do things. I can tell you, Pitt fans right now, I've heard a lot of conversations. The Peterson Event Center and the new Victory Heights building, expect some naming rights there. There's going to be some new naming rights. I think they're going to be able to build. I think you have to, and I think that there's a lot of millions of dollars that are going to be put into that. From everything I've been told, there's a number of different organizations and companies that have worked their way onto their list and expect an announcement from Alan Green and the University of Pittsburgh probably within the next couple of weeks. I mean, that they've worked on that deal, and I think there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. But also, a small fee. You've seen a lot of, Virginia Tech, for instance, they're doing $200 a semester towards, a fee towards the students. People may not like it, but compared to what we were paying when we went to Pitt, hell, $400 extra a year, that's nothing compared to the thousands of dollars we were paying already. So it doesn't matter. But at the end of the day, they're making millions of dollars in revenue that will go towards the organization and go towards sports. And whether people like it or not, athletics is the front porch to the university. It drives applicants, and applicants drives revenue, which keeps the university going in the right direction. Now, with a couple questions here, I know my screen is freezing out a little bit here. It's delayed a little bit. Apologize.
JJ, if I could quickly add, I think you're right in terms of the naming rights on the buildings. There's going to be an abundance of new structures. And people, I do have actually a tremendous amount of experience with this. The Georgetown Center for Financial Markets and Policy is the Psaros Center. It's named after my brother. I know some of the transactions, and my brother continues to get back. He just gave their commencement speech. He'll be teaching there, but he's done extraordinarily well for himself. That's an understatement. But so I have experience in that. If it's me, with all the structures that were being built, I would take what was perceived as a negative that Heather, I think, bit off a little bit more than she can chew. That's an understatement. Yeah. But I would utilize all those structures, and I would smack a name on every single one. Any way you can get money, and that's kind of where we're at. You got to do it.
I couldn't agree more. And we'll get to some of these comments here. Let's see here, because obviously I don't want to waste any more. I don't want to waste too much of your time. We're about an hour and 12 minutes in, as we are right now. Appreciate Anthony, JJ. Great job getting my man Harry, the Guru, on tonight. That's always appreciate that.
Thanks, Anthony.
Matt Speck has had a comment in here, but Anthony's got a good one here. We'll get to that. Really good comment there. Let me see here. Where's Matt? Here we go. Online Pitt talk, past and present, LMA. Two legends ready for the year. Defense will keep us pretty much in every game regardless. Offense needs to do their part and can be a big year. Hail to Pitt.
I think Matt's 100% correct. If you're going to sum it up with what we just talked about, he's 100% correct.
Exactly. And I think that once it does it on both sides, I think Pitt will be fine. Hot take. Don't know if we quite have the pass rush specialist, but if the rotation can stay healthy, I think by the end of the year, the 2025 Pitt defensive line will put up similar numbers to the 2021 defensive line. Wow, if that happens, I think Pitt's going to have a pretty good year and is fighting for a spot in the ACC title game. I can tell you that right now.
From Matt's lips to God's ears, football God. I hope that happens. That'd be incredible.
Question from Anthony. Harry, who has the better Greek food in the area? Anthos, Eva, Galiz, or Rhodos? I'm probably mispronouncing those names, but what is your opinion on that?
Yasu Anthony Bossisa. I'm gonna go with I love Anthos. My wife and I love it. We've dined there multiple times. They sell some great stuff too. We're fortunate. We have some good Greek restaurants here in Pittsburgh, but Anthony, I'm going to go with Anthos. They get I don't get paid by them, by the way, but if they would give me free baklava, some uzo, bring it on, man. I'm good, but I'm going to go with Anthos.
Well, there you go. Everybody in the stream, if you want some good Greek food, that's where you need to go. Because I can tell you, I'll be going
Anthony,
there.
let me add, go to Weird in West Virginia and go to Theo Yanni's. And you tell Sean, the owner, Harry sent you. He will set you up. Go to Theo Yanni's in Weird, and that's the next best place.
The man himself, Max, Des Reed over Jaheim White. Love it. Got this one here again. Anthony, appreciate you jumping on here as always. JJ, great to have Harry on here. There might have been another comment on here.
My buddy Tony, I hope he's doing well.
Let me see here. There's one more. Adam had a really good comment here. Definitely have to stop the run against West Virginia.
Right.
I don't think they have any bigger names at wide receiver, which is a very good point there.
Adam, 100% correct. I think if you stop the run, you win the game.
And then here, good comment here. As long as Pitt doesn't turn the ball over, Pitt should win by 14-ish. I'm not going to lie. I agree. Because of the talent level, the continuity, I agree. Pitt should be able to win that West Virginia Backyard Brawl game, the final one, pretty handily if they do their job and they do things correctly.
Right.
Well, I don't see any more comments again here. And again, I think we were able to put some new light in here in terms of the revenue streams. Again, Pitt fans, make sure you watch out for those comments coming up here pretty soon with the Peterson Event Center, naming rights, building revenue. I think that it's going to be good for the University of Pittsburgh. And I think Pitt is in a good position right now. And I was very disappointed in Heather. She was great for a number of different areas within the Pitt athletic department, probably the best that's been at Pitt in my lifetime. But there were numerous areas which they were just a lot of disappointment, and NIL was one of it. And it was a battle like you wouldn't believe. And I think what hurt Pitt in 2021 after that season, Heather and Pat really thought, NIL was going to go away, which I thought was very naive at the time. I thought that their direction was wrong. And Joan Gable has done one hell of a job. And for the people that have asked me, I can tell you on record, she is 110% behind Pitt athletics, especially Pitt football. And I can tell you she's talked about numerous different areas. The people in the comment section, I was there, when Alan Green talked to everyone for the spring game in the club area. The comment was brought up about a Pitt stadium. I am still in the arena of that's going to get done as the years go on. There is a plan behind there. Alan Green talked about how there's a lot of moving parts that goes into that. Joan Gable called it a necessity. I think that once Victory Heights is done, I think there's a projection there. Obviously, Harry, I'm not sure if you heard anything otherwise in terms of the stadium or whatnot, but I think preferably before 2030 we're gonna hear something.
And those grumblings I hear from a lot of people, especially from within the athletic department. I think something will come to fruition in the future. When, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think you'd have to be pretty naive to think that there isn't some plans in the works.
I couldn't agree more. Tony, I'm doing great. Harry, thanks. What's up, Max? Appreciate it. I think she's moving us in the right direction for sure, Anthony. And I know people were very concerned about it whenever she was hired, which I completely disagreed with. I mean, I heard a number of different areas where she's done a tremendous job of bringing in billions of dollars in terms of really bringing a lot of revenue in terms of the actual dollars for the universities. She comes from Minnesota, a city university, which I think coincides with us very well for what our problems are, what our needs are. She does a really good job of bringing those on board. So I was happy about that. But Pitt's moving in the right direction, and we are in alignment. And from anybody that I talk to, we're all in alignment. Well, guys, I don't see any more comments. Harry, cannot thank you enough for coming on here. You are the original OG, brother. And anytime you're available, you can come on here anytime. Carlo is the same exact way. I cannot thank you enough for spending on a Sunday night. I mean, it's a day everyone gets prepared, enjoys their day, an hour and 18 minutes on a little podcast on YouTube. I can tell you this, I cannot thank you enough for coming on board. And I can tell you from the comment section here, everyone loves it. And everyone who's going to be viewing this tomorrow, make sure you guys add a comment after this is posted. What would you agree with us on? What didn't you agree with us on? Like the video, subscribe. But Harry, make sure, again, tell them where they can find you on X, LinkedIn, Instagram, where they can follow you. Because, I mean, you're an incredible follow.
Sure. In terms of my book, harrypsaros.com. And by the way, in homage to Pitt, I just want to show that blue and gold on the cover. Yeah. And obviously at Pitt Guru, which has been a title given to me years ago. I'm going back 30 years ago when I started the first Pitt site, the Pitt Guru's Panther page. I'm the OG when I started it. So again, Harry Psaros is on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Facebook. Don't be shy. Message me anytime. I love talking Pitt. I love connecting with people. And again, too, I'm right now making, I think, a significant difference nationally and internationally with autism. If you know anybody like having issues with that as well, want to reach out to me, please do. And this has been awesome. Pitt's in my blood, and I love doing this. And this year I plan on jumping back, and if I can, just writing 2 or 3 times a month. I want to do that now that the book is established and moving in the right direction. So look for me in the future. I'm going to start writing a little bit more.
That's good. And WRW Pitt, bring Harry back again. We will certainly be doing that. And actually, I think to get everyone a really good show, I think we'll put something in the works for you guys, because obviously I'm seeing the comments flow in here. I think what we need to do is bring Carlo and Harry on the next time that we have a Sunday conversation, which, again, I cannot thank you guys enough. Great seeing you again. Will, good stuff. Harry and JJ, hell to Pitt. Thank you guys, as always. Guys, the show is what it is because of you. You know, I love talking about Pitt football, you know, being able to talk about this and put Pitt in a light to where people really know the University of Pittsburgh and how great it is. And just, I think Harry really displays that as well. Carlo displays that. You, each and every one of you in the comment section certainly does that. And the show is what it is because of you. I can talk till I'm blue in the face about Pitt football. I can talk for 3 or 4 hours. Same thing with Harry. But the show is what it is because of you, because you guys support it. And you guys are always here asking great questions. So I cannot thank you enough. Make sure you support Harry, his book, everything that you can do, and follow him everywhere. Guys, as always and forever, hail to Pitt and hail to the ACC.
Hail to Pitt.
See you guys next time.